I am joined by Independent Senator Angus King. He serves on the Armed Services Committee and the Intelligence Committee. Of course, a senator from Maine. Senator, thank you so much for being with us. I do want to start with coronavirus because I know this is an area you have been working on very hard over the last few days. The president says, quote, "It is very well under control in our country." Yet, Chuck Schumer, the minority leader, said yesterday the Trump administration has been asleep at the wheel. President Trump, there is a pandemic of coronavirus. Where are you? Where is your plan? So which is it? Very much under control or asleep at the wheel?
Well, I think it's probably somewhere in between. I think, number one, I think the president is to be given some appreciation for the emergency request of $2.5 billion that's come out in the last couple of days. That was the right thing to do, and I'm sure Congress is going to approve that very quickly. On the other hand, I think what Chuck was probably referring to was 2 years ago, a little less than 2 years ago, John Bolton abolished the position of global health coordination in the National Security Council and disbanded the office, and that office has been empty until today. And why is that important? Because we've already seen conflict between the CDC, the State Department, Department of Homeland Security, and there really is a necessity for someone at the top, for someone in the White House that can knock heads in the bureaucracy and make decisions and have them stick throughout the federal government. The other piece, which I find kind of astounding, is just last fall, the State Department abolished a program called PREDICT, which was designed, it was under USAID, designed to examine and indeed predict and work on global potential pandemics. That office was abolished last fall and hasn't yet been replaced, although they're talking about it. So I think there is, just on the record, a lack of preparation. And I put in a bill just in the last few days to create this position in the National Security Council as a permanent position, because these kind of things are going to happen in a globalized economy, and we need to be prepared, not scrambling to play catch up.
On the subject of scrambling, Ken Cuccinelli, who's Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security, acting deputy, he tweeted yesterday, he's on the coronavirus task force. He tweeted, quote, "Has the Johns Hopkins map of the coronavirus stopped working for other people or just me?"
Yeah.
What does it tell you that someone of the coronavirus task force is complaining on Twitter about IT problems?
Well, I rest my case. And also, by the way, Ken, you've got the CDC, which is a pretty substantial, Center for Disease Control, pretty substantial organization to look at issues like this. But that's my point. There is a lack of coordination, and I think it goes back to May of 2018 when they kicked out the guy that was there and disbanded the office. Talk about bad timing. That was it.
Yeah, it is a little concerning when someone working on the task force basically says, "Hey, Siri, help us stop coronavirus."
Right.
I do want to ask you about some other questions the president faced, namely about the Russian attacks on the U.S. election. Our Jim Acosta asked him if he would forswear any help from any country, and the president said, quote, "I haven't been given any help." Just historically speaking, you are on the Intelligence Committee that's been investigating this for some time. In 2016, at least, that wasn't the case. It was the finding of the intelligence community that the Russians did attack and did want to help President Trump, correct?
There's no doubt about that, John. That's well established by the unanimous reports of the intelligence community and has been confirmed by the Senate Intelligence Committee, which is a very bipartisan committee. So there's no doubt about what happened historically. I think what's missing is a full-throated rejection of any interference in this coming election. And that's where I'm concerned. If the president can get over 2016 and say, okay, that's history, but I am against foreign involvement in our elections, and if the Russians or anybody else get involved in 2020, they're going to feel the full weight of the response to the U.S. government. So far, he hasn't said that, and I think that's in effect partially disarming us in terms of our ability to react to this kind of interference.
In fact, he refused to say when asked point blank whether he agrees that the Russians are trying to interfere in 2020. What does that tell you?
Well, I think he's, again, seems to be unable to acknowledge what happened in 2016. It feels to him like it undermines his mandate. And I ought to remind him he lives in the White House. He won the election. He is the president. And now his job is to defend the country. And we know that the Russians are gearing up in 2020. We don't know, at least I don't know, what their direction is. But we need to put them on notice that this is unacceptable.
So the president was also asked about the reports over the last few days that his administration has lists of people who are loyal and disloyal to him, and that the disloyal people should be weeded out. And of course, we saw the acting director of national intelligence, Joseph Maguire, fired or pushed out after issues or concerns about some briefings. You have concerns about the very idea of loyalty bars inside an administration. Why?
Well, I think there are two important points. Number one, when anybody goes to work for the United States government, whether it's the Department of Agriculture or the Department of State or the White House, they take an oath. And the oath is to the Constitution of the United States. It's not to the president. It's not to the Senate or the House of Representatives. It's to the Constitution. That's where their loyalty is supposed to lie. Now, having said that, the president has a number of political appointments, cabinet members, director of national intelligence. There are a lot of political appointments throughout the government, and the president has the right to appoint the people that he wants and to push out the people that he doesn't like for whatever reason. So I think that's important. There's a deeper issue here, though, John, and that is the turnover and the number of vacancies and acting officials in the government right now. It's at an absolutely all-time high, and there are two problems with that. You don't have continuity of leadership. There are a huge number of vacancies, for example, in the Defense Department, all over the government, in the State Department. Those jobs are important jobs, like the pandemic coordinator at the White House that's vacant. But also, when you have all these acting officials, and some of them have been, for a long, long time, you're avoiding the Constitution. You're avoiding Senate confirmation. You're sidestepping the requirement that this is supposed to be with the advice and consent of the Senate in these important positions. And I think that's worrisome. So you've got a vacancy problem. You've got an acting problem. And that's impairing our ability to respond to whatever the situation, whether it's coronavirus or some kind of a terrorist attack or anything else. So that's, I think, a deeper problem with this administration. And you Google vacancies in Trump administration, and you get all kinds of stories and charts about how there are more vacancies and more turnover than in any prior administration, at least going back 40 years or so.
Of course, there are signs that the White House Google is not working, at least in terms of investigating coronavirus. Senator Angus King, it's a pleasure to have you on. Thanks for waiting throughout the president's news conference. I appreciate it.